very, very early on the Wednesday morning between the death and the funeral. And I just sat down and wrote it. And it took about an hour and a half and just came pouring out, really. Actually, it's interesting. Sounds rather sort of bizarre, but I did go to Diana's coffin the day after I'd written it. And
on the eve of what would become the most watched funeral of the 20th century, a man quietly entered the room where his sister's coffin rested. He unfolded a sheet of paper and read every word aloud, not for cameras or a rehearsal audience, but for Diana herself. He wanted her to hear it first. That man was Charles Spencer, the 9th Earl Spencer, the younger brother of one of the most photographed women in history. What he read that night was far more than a eulogy. It was a private vow, a promise made before the world ever heard a single line of it. For nearly 3 decades, he has honored that promise without publicity or carefully planned interviews. Those close to him say the quiet sense of responsibility he carried after Diana's burial at Althorpe has influenced countless decisions ever since. So when a polished documentary proposal arrived on his desk in early 2026, carrying the names of Netflix, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, Charles Spencer read it, placed it back on his desk and replied with only 4 words. "Is this a joke?" Those 4 words were not arrogance or disdain for the spotlight. They reflected 28 years of conviction packed into a single response, and Harry, of all people, never expected it. Tonight, I'm going to show you the proposal, the private detail they hoped he would never reveal, and why that brief reply may have changed the Sussex story forever. But before we go any further, let me ask you something. When was the last time you thought about Charles Spencer? Not Diana, not Harry, not William. Charles Spencer himself. Most people can point to only one moment. Westminster Abbey, September 6, 1997, before an audience of roughly 2 billion people. A man in a black suit stood at the lectern and delivered words so powerful they echoed far beyond the church walls. He made one promise, and this is the word that matters, promised, that Diana's sons would be raised with warmth and imagination, shielded from the cold institutional rigidity that had crushed their mother. Before 2 billion people, Charles Spencer made a promise that Diana's blood family would never allow the system to take her sons. He spoke those words directly before the Queen, Prince Philip, and the future king without the slightest hesitation. Then, almost as quickly as he had stepped into the spotlight, he returned to Northamptonshire and disappeared from public attention. That long, deliberate silence is exactly why what is happening now carries so much weight. Charles Spencer, now 62, leads a family whose history stretches back 5 centuries. And since 1997, he has done something almost no one connected to Diana has managed to do. He kept his promise. Think about that. In a media world built around Diana, with her image appearing on magazine covers, in museums, documentaries, and countless tributes, Charles Spencer never turned his unique access into a business. He never sold the archive, never opened the family collection for commercial projects, and never invited cameras into the private vault. Nearly every Diana documentary has relied on the same familiar public footage and widely available photographs. Charles Spencer has never released the original material, not even once. Ask yourself why. Then ask what kind of trust and what kind of purpose it would take for someone like him to finally unlock those doors. Then came the people who wanted exactly that. The story begins with something small, elegant, and seemingly harmless. At the royal wedding in 2018, Meghan Markle arrived at the evening reception wearing Diana's famous aquamarine ring. That pale blue stone was instantly recognizable to anyone familiar with Diana's story. From where Charles Spencer stood, it may have looked like a heartfelt tribute. His nephew's new wife was carrying Diana's memory into one of the biggest moments of her life. It felt like remembrance. It may even have felt like family. Then came the butterfly earrings, followed by the Cartier tank watch and the gold bracelets. Piece by piece, appearance after appearance, items that had once belonged to Diana appeared on Meghan during moments when photographers were not simply expected. They were guaranteed to be there. Before we go any further, let's be fair. because fairness matters on this channel, and I want you to keep this in mind. No one can prove those choices were anything other than sincere tributes. Grief affects families in deeply personal ways, and Meghan had only recently married into one of the most emotionally complicated families in history. But here is the question worth thinking about. When does a tribute become a pattern? And when does that pattern begin to look like strategy? Once can be tribute, twice can become habit. When similar choices repeatedly happen during major events with guaranteed cameras, people naturally start asking questions. And the man at Althorpe was watching. Remember that, because the jewellery was only the beginning. What followed is where, according to many accounts, the atmosphere reportedly began to change. Then came the Oprah interview in March 2021. The world remembers it, but imagine viewing it through the eyes of Charles Spencer, reportedly watching alone from the home where Diana spent her childhood. The lighting was warm and subdued. The setting felt intimate and deeply personal. One woman, one sympathetic interviewer, and one powerful institution that, she said, had ignored her struggles, dismissed her mental health concerns, and left her feeling isolated. Anyone familiar with royal history could immediately recognize the similarities to Diana's 1995 Panorama interview. Compare them side by side. A royal wife describing isolation, an institution unwilling to listen, and a decision to speak directly to the public through a trusted interviewer. The quiet lighting, the confessional atmosphere, and the feeling that hidden truths were finally being revealed all echoed familiar themes. The similarities were difficult to ignore. The visual style felt familiar. The storytelling followed a similar path. One woman, one sympathetic interviewer, one institution. Yet one crucial difference stood above all the rest. Diana gave her interview while still trapped inside the royal system with everything at risk. The 2021 interview took place from a California home after that departure, with a major production behind it and a streaming partnership already in place. Diana's interview was widely viewed as a desperate appeal for help. The later interview, regardless of individual opinions, also marked the beginning of a new public chapter. Watching from the home where his sister grew up, Charles Spencer reportedly did not see it simply as a tribute. How could he? Because of what you're about to learn. Something about his history with Panorama was so painful and so personal that it explains everything that happened next. The secret, the guilt that built the vault. This is the part of the story most coverage never explores, and it is the key that unlocks everything. For years, it has been widely reported that Charles Spencer was the person who first introduced his sister to Martin Bashir, the journalist behind the 1995 Panorama interview. That same interview is now known to have been secured through forged documents and calculated deception. Fake bank statements, false claims of surveillance, and manufactured evidence of betrayal were allegedly used to convince an already vulnerable Diana that those around her could not be trusted and that speaking publicly was her only option. Her vulnerability was not simply part of the story, it became central to it. According to these long-standing accounts, Charles Spencer unknowingly opened the door. When the full details of how the interview had been obtained finally emerged years later, the realization reportedly struck him with enormous force. It meant he had unknowingly played a role in one of the most painful episodes of his sister's public life. Think about what that could do to someone. You spend your adult life believing you are protecting your sister. You stand in Westminster Abbey and promise before 2 billion people that you will help protect her sons. Then you discover that one of the most damaging media events of her life followed an introduction you made. Since then, many believe his actions have reflected a deep sense of responsibility. The sealed archives, the repeated refusals over the years, the decision to bury Diana at Althorpe instead of elsewhere, the private home movies, and the handwritten diaries that have never been shared outside the Spencer family. By all accounts, he has worked to ensure nothing resembling the Panorama experience could ever happen to Diana again, even decades after her death. In doing so, he has achieved something remarkably rare. He has preserved a part of Diana that the public has never fully seen. A private, unguarded version of her remains known only because one man has consistently chosen to keep those memories protected. Now imagine yourself in his position. You have spent 28 years protecting that legacy. You have declined proposals from networks, publishers, and production companies. Then one day, a proposal arrives requesting Diana's handwritten diaries, childhood home movies at Althorpe, and access to the private archive you have guarded since 1997, all to support a story that ultimately shifts the spotlight away from Diana herself. What would your answer be? Tell me in the comments what you think. Now let's look at the proposal itself and why Charles Spencer reportedly dismissed it as a joke. Once you hear what was allegedly requested, his response may seem far less like arrogance and far more like the only answer someone in his position could reasonably give. The proposal centered on a major anniversary documentary planned for 2027, marking 30 years since the Paris Tunnel tragedy. It was presented as an emotional, cinematic, and definitive film about Diana, led by her own son. On paper, the concept sounded powerful. Netflix reportedly embraced it, and the production budget was said to be significant. At first glance, the project appeared to be a heartfelt tribute to Diana's memory. But here is what it reportedly required, and every detail matters. The proposal allegedly sought access to Althorpe, including the family home, the grounds, the lake, and the island where Diana was laid to rest. It also reportedly requested access to the family's private archives, including Diana's handwritten diaries that were never intended for public eyes. They also reportedly wanted unseen home movies, private family footage that no one outside the Spencer family has ever viewed. Without those materials, the documentary would have relied on the same familiar public footage used for decades. With them, it had the potential to become the most complete Diana documentary ever produced. There was also another reported element that changed everything. According to the claims, the film aimed to draw a direct connection between Diana's struggles with the establishment and Meghan's own experiences. Meghan Markle would reportedly be presented as a modern continuation of Diana's story, carrying that legacy into a new generation. Imagine what Charles Spencer may have thought while reading that proposal. He had already watched Diana's jewelry appear at major public events. He had seen the Oprah interview. He had watched the Netflix documentary series in which the couple described their experiences through comparisons that many viewers connected to Diana's story. From his perspective, Diana's legacy had gradually become part of a different narrative. And now, the proposal reportedly sought access to the diaries, the island, the archives, and the private memories that had remained protected for decades. It becomes easier to understand why his reported response was so brief. The real surprise may simply be that it lasted only 4 words. To understand why this documentary reportedly carried such importance, you also have to consider the state of the Sussex media projects in early 2026. Reports suggested their major Netflix agreement was facing increasing uncertainty. The project expected to strengthen that partnership was the lifestyle series With Love, Meghan. Instead, it reportedly drew a wave of criticism. Reviews arrived quickly. The Evening Standard awarded 4 stars, but still included sharp criticism, while The Times gave it 2 stars and described it, in a phrase many readers remembered, as surely dull. Another publication joined the criticism. The Daily Telegraph awarded 2 stars, describing the series as an exercise in self-focus, filled with lavish brunches, celebrity friends, and business promotion. Then came The Guardian. Pay attention here because The Guardian has often criticised the monarchy and has previously expressed sympathy toward Meghan. If there was a major British newspaper expected to respond positively, many would have pointed to them. Instead, they awarded the series just 1 star. One reviewer even suggested it could be the last project Meghan makes for Netflix. When publications with very different editorial viewpoints arrive at similar conclusions, it suggests something beyond a simple disagreement over taste. Now consider another important detail. The couple's first Netflix documentary, Harry and Meghan, remains the platform's most watched documentary debut. That fact helps explain everything that followed. Later projects, including Heart of Invictus, Polo and With Love Meghan, reportedly received progressively weaker public responses. The audience reaction seemed to point in one direction. Many viewers appeared less interested in lifestyle content than in stories connected to the royal family and Diana. Their strongest performing project remained the one most closely linked to those subjects, which helps explain why attention reportedly shifted toward a major Diana documentary. At the same time, reports suggested the Netflix agreement was approaching its end, with renewal uncertain. The Spotify partnership had already concluded, and the American Riviera Orchard venture was still trying to establish itself. Royal commentator Ian Pelham-Turner reportedly argued that losing Netflix would represent a significant setback. Viewed through that lens, the proposed Diana documentary takes on a different meaning. Rather than being seen only as a tribute, some observers viewed it as a project with enormous commercial importance, and the man at Althorp reportedly rejected it with just 4 words: "Now step back and look at the bigger picture. Put emotions aside for a moment and focus on the broader situation." After stepping back from royal duties and no longer using their HRH styles in the same way, Harry and Meghan needed to build a new commercial path. What they still possessed was worldwide recognition, along with one connection that remained uniquely powerful: Diana. Her story, her legacy, and the public interest surrounding her continued to hold extraordinary value. Yet the person protecting much of that private history, the family archive, and the original materials was still the 62-year-old man at Althorp, whom the proposal reportedly reached only after everything else had already been planned. Think of it this way: every appearance featuring Diana's jewellery, every interview that reminded audiences of Panorama, and every comparison to Diana in a Netflix production could be viewed by some as drawing upon her legacy. The comparison works only until the moment permission is needed from the person responsible for protecting that legacy. Look at how the sequence reportedly unfolded. In 2018, the aquamarine ring appeared at the wedding reception and was widely seen as a touching tribute. Then came the butterfly earrings, the Cartier watch, and the bracelets, each appearing during major public moments. In 2021 came the Oprah interview, which many viewers compared to the structure of Diana's famous television appearance. Later came the Netflix documentary series, where some audiences felt Diana's story had become part of a broader narrative. Then, according to the reports, came the 2026 proposal seeking access to the private archive, the diaries, the home movies, and Althorp itself. From that perspective, each request became larger than the last. The final request reportedly reached the one person who had consistently protected those private memories, and that request was turned down. That brings us to the next part of the story, a development many discussions barely touched upon. According to reports, Charles Spencer did not make his decision entirely in isolation. Sources close to the palace have reportedly pointed to an understanding between Diana's brother and her eldest son that many royal watchers have overlooked. It has long been reported that Prince William has been deeply concerned about the commercialization of his mother's image. But William occupies a very different position. As the future king, every public action carries significant consequences. As he once said, "I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda, change for good, and I embrace that and I enjoy that change. I don't fear it. That's the bit that excites me." Publicly opposing his brother's media projects would almost certainly trigger worldwide headlines about palace conflict and family divisions. When the institution intervenes, many people see it as protecting itself. But when Diana's own brother, the man who stood in Westminster Abbey and promised before 2 billion people to protect her sons, reportedly dismisses a project as a joke, the situation looks very different. There is no palace decision to debate. There is only a brother expressing his view about how his sister's memory should be treated. That is what makes this moment so remarkable. the one person able to refuse the request without speaking for the EU institution was also the one whose decision could not easily be framed as palace interference. William never needed to step forward publicly, and some observers believe that was less a coincidence than two guardians of the same memory arriving at the same boundary from different directions. Imagine it this way. When two governments cannot communicate directly without creating bigger problems, they often rely on a trusted intermediary, someone respected by both sides but holding no official office. That person can deliver difficult messages precisely because they are independent. According to this interpretation, Charles Spencer now fills a similar role within this family dispute. He has public respect, family ties to both princes, and a unique connection to Diana's legacy, yet he holds no constitutional position. The palace cannot easily reject a project without creating controversy. William cannot publicly oppose Harry without fueling another global headline. But Charles Spencer can reportedly say no in just 4 words, leaving the attention focused somewhere else. Then came another unexpected development. Reports claimed Charles Spencer privately wrote to Prince William, encouraging him to address the growing divide between Prince Harry and the royal family. But according to those reports, this was not simply about repairing personal relationships. The reported message focused on stability, long-term strategy, and the public standing of the monarchy. It allegedly argued that continued silence was allowing Prince Harry's public image to be shaped almost entirely by ongoing media narratives. According to the claims, Harry was increasingly being viewed less as a soldier or senior royal figure and more through the lens of his public relationship. Spencer reportedly warned that completely ignoring Harry risked giving the Sussexes complete control over the public conversation, while criticism of the monarchy continued without a direct response. Consider what that would mean if true. Diana's brother, the same man who challenged the royal family during her funeral address, was now reportedly encouraging the future king to defend the institution's public image. For many observers, that represented a remarkable shift in how loyalties within the family appeared to be evolving. Meanwhile, the deeper family divide reportedly remained unresolved. Recent reports suggested the royal family was open to limited discussions with Prince Harry, but remained far more cautious regarding Meghan Markle. Following reports that Harry's representatives met with King Charles's communications secretary in London, many accounts pointed to one issue at the centre of the disagreement: trust. According to those reports, that trust had not been restored. The family's reported concern was not limited to public criticism or past disagreements. It was the possibility that private conversations or family moments could eventually become part of future media projects. Every honest discussion, every family gathering, and every private exchange was reportedly viewed through that concern. Reports suggest Harry may eventually find himself travelling to the United Kingdom alone, without Meghan, Archie, or Lilibet, if he hopes to rebuild any relationship with what remains of his family. Meanwhile, King Charles has maintained a deliberate silence across the 5,459 miles separating him from his youngest son, even as Harry has reportedly offered to share his diary dates with the family as a gesture of transparency. William and Catherine have not spoken to the Sussexes in years. That is the inheritance of this saga. Not a documentary or a streaming deal, but two brothers who cannot find a road back to each other, and a family watching from Althorpe with a gate that stays locked. Before you pick a side, ask yourself this: whose side are you on? Because a conflict like this never stays inside the family. Right now, there is a genuine global debate across social media, news panels, and international front pages. On one side, those who support Charles Spencer and Prince William argue that Diana's story has already been told many times, and that turning her memory into a content pipeline risks diminishing the emotional weight of her legacy. They believe the 30th anniversary should be a moment of reflection, not a premiere with a marketing campaign attached. On the other side, Harry's defenders raise a case that deserves consideration. Diana shaped both of her sons equally. Harry has a perspective on history that nobody else alive can fully provide. He knows what it was like to be her child, to accompany her through hospital wards and homeless shelters, and to lose her at 15 while the entire world watched. Nobody can take that perspective from him. But try standing in both pairs of shoes before you decide. Imagine you are William. The most painful event of your childhood is being scheduled as a content release by your own brother's production partners. Now imagine you are Harry. You're told the story of your own mother, the woman who taught you compassion and purpose, is somehow no longer yours to tell. Both of those positions hurt. Both are human. Both can exist at the same time. The real issue may not lie in Althorpe, Montecito, or Kensington Palace. It may lie in the commercial machinery wrapped around grief, the system that looks at a mother's handwritten diaries and calculates their streaming value. That is what Charles Spencer has been fighting for 28 years, quietly, with no press releases and no applause. Now let me close every loop exactly as promised. Loop 1. What was inside the pitch? A 30th anniversary Diana documentary for 2027 that reportedly requested Althorpe, the private archives, handwritten diaries, and unseen home movies, while presenting Meghan Markle as the modern continuation of Diana's story. Arriving as the Spotify deal had ended, American Riviera Orchard was reportedly struggling, and the $100 million Netflix agreement was nearing its end. Loop 2. Why did the gatekeeper say no? Because Charles Spencer reportedly carries the lasting burden of introducing his sister to Martin Bashir before the interview that was later found to have been secured through forged documents. He reportedly vowed that no journalist, network, or family member would ever turn Diana's pain into public entertainment again. Every refusal since has been viewed as part of that commitment. Loop 3. The letter. Rather than siding with Harry, Diana's brother reportedly urged Prince William to break his silence and defend the Crown's image. In Spencer's view, the greatest threat was no longer Harry himself, but the unchecked public narrative. So the question I leave with you is the one this entire story has been building toward. Is it ever right to spend Diana's legacy as currency, even by her own son? Was Charles Spencer right to keep the vault closed? Or does Harry's grief give him a claim that no gatekeeper, however principled, can deny? Tell me what you think in the comments. I genuinely read them all and want to know where you stand. Diana was exploited once by a man with forged documents. Her brother has decided she will not be exploited again by a man with a streaming deal. The vault at Althorpe remains closed. The question now is what happens next in Montecito and whether Netflix ultimately walks away. When new developments emerge, we'll be here to break them down together. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.